Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for CDFW's third R3 Harvest Huddle Hour. We have a really fun discussion plan for today on foraging. We're hoping to provide you with some helpful tips and get you excited about the many types of wild foods that you can safely harvest in your local areas. Some quick housekeeping for all our attendees. Those of you who are 18 and over will be eligible to earn ISE tickets between now and the end of the year, pending COVID restrictions and the ISE being held. To be eligible, you must attend at least two R3H3 sessions, have indicated that you're okay with us contacting you in your registration form regarding ISE tickets, and complete the link that we will email you after the presentation, which enters your info into the ISE sweepstakes. If you have questions or need more information, either type your question in the chat box or email the R3 team. We will have a Q&A at the end, but questions can be submitted at any time during the presentation by using the chat icon. For those of you who are new to Zoom, the chat icon looks like that little speech balloon on the bottom, on the bar at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that, type in your question, and then hit enter. Questions can't be viewed by anyone watching the presentation, only by the moderators, so don't be afraid to ask questions. And while we're excited to get those questions, please note that we will not be able to answer kind of law and regulation related questions during the Q&A, because state, county, and local laws vary substantially when it comes to foraging. Instead, we encourage you to check out the CDFW's R3 page and click on the foraging tab for more information on laws and regulations. We are fortunate to have two CDFW employees, one currently with the department and one former. They're here with us to present on this topic. So first off, we have Lieutenant Alan Gregory, one of our amazing wardens in the law enforcement department. Alan attended Humboldt State and earned a BS in wildlife management. In 2002, he attended the Fish and Game Academy in Napa. And in 2015, he was promoted to lieutenant and became the Advanced Hunter Education Program Coordinator. Welcome, Alan. Thanks, Alan, for joining us. Also, thanks for being here. Also with us today is Henry Lomeli, a 32-year veteran wildlife biologist with CDFW, who is an avid forager and has plenty to share about outdoor living today. Welcome, Henry.
Hello, Alan. Good. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you both. Thank you both so much for being here today to share your experiences and expertise. I'm going to turn it over to you. You are the expert, so take it away.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget.
Who's the,
thank
the
you.
Former, you're a former CDF?
No, I'm current CDFW.
Me too. One little correction. We're both still employed with California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you.
Bridget. Hey, so we're happy to have all of you guys here today. Henry and I have been foraging for a long time and kind of got into it with similar circumstances, and we've developed our skills over the years and our abilities to identify certain things. We wanted to share some of that with you guys and get you excited in going out into not necessarily the wilderness or the woods, but there's foraging all over, in the cities, just outside of towns, rivers, creeks. There's all kinds of stuff. So we're happy to share some of that with you guys.
Yeah, a lot of people think that foraging has to be this very complicated art form of knowing scientific names and all sorts of extreme plants. But really, in its basic form, if you've wandered out in the woods and picked blackberries and have brought them back to camp and sprinkled them in your pancakes, you're a forager. Most basic foraging starts with berry picking at a young age. And that's sort of the ground floor of foraging. It starts with picking berries and it just goes off in hundreds of different branches. So you don't have to overthink foraging. It's very, very simple and it's fun to do. It's one of those things that most people can get a lot of enjoyment out of, especially these days, because one of the safest places to be is outdoors. And kids are great foragers. I have 3 boys, and I've noticed that they are really good at foraging. When they were little, I thought it was because they were closer to the ground and they could see things better. But it's like going on an Easter egg hunt.
Same with my kids. Their vision is sharp, and they can see everything still in detail and pick up all kinds of things.
And even if they don't like to eat certain things, they still love to hunt and find things.
Right. So, you know, one of the things we wanted to touch on and reiterate is that if you guys are looking for more information on foraging, we do have some pretty good resources on our R3 site under foraging. You can go there. We also want to just to reiterate the law thing. Make sure you guys look into the laws if you're going to go to areas, particularly like national parks or state parks. Some of those areas don't allow any kind of foraging at all. National forests, there's some rules with mushroom picking. If you go over a certain amount, you need to have a particular permit, or it's assumed you're going to be commercializing those mushrooms if you pick over a certain amount. So just look into those regulations before you go. We don't want any of you guys to get in trouble when you're just out looking for some food. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and I think we should start some content here. And
I can't wait.
Henry, how'd you get into foraging?
Oh, that's a great question. I was young, I know that. I might have been 12 years old. An old timer named Frank Pereira, an old Portuguese guy, made me some polenta in his house in a cast iron skillet, and it had wild mushrooms that he had picked. And I remember very vividly what it tasted like and it smelled like. And he said, oh yeah, these are wild mushrooms that my grandmother taught me how to pick. He says, come on out, I'll show you how to identify them. That was a key moment in kind of energizing my curiosity into foraging. And then I read this book called My Side of the Mountain. And it was about a young boy who escaped to the Catskills Mountains and survived. So those are the moments that kind of catapult you into that mode of discovery.
Right, right.
How about you, Alan?
You know, I can remember back, I grew up in Stockton, and to a single mother, we didn't get outdoors very often in Stockton, but my mom married my stepdad when I was 12, and I started going hunting with him. And it took a couple of years to kind of be successful. So I remember like it was yesterday, and this was 28 years ago, roughly. We were on a ranch over on the coast and came up through this opening, and there was this old Homestead apple orchard. And here, lo and behold, is this lone buck standing on his hind legs, picking apples off these trees. Unfortunately, that was his last meal, but it got me thinking that that deer is out there eating the same things that I like to eat. And it kind of got me in that thought process of, if I can find what the animals like to eat, I might like to eat it too, and started my foray into foraging. So for the Homestead apple orchards, I shot a little video for you guys, and why don't you guys take a look at that now? All right, so here we are today up in the lower Sierra Nevadas above Forest Hill. And one of the things about being a game warden that I like is you get to spend a lot of time roaming around the woods, and every once in a while you run across an old homestead and an old apple orchard that was planted way back when that's still producing apples. What you find is that these are older variety apples. They're not selected for shelf life or storage, and they're very, very good eating apples and very good to make into different things. So when you're lucky enough to find one of these, and you also find a food source for deer, for bears. My first deer was shot out of an apple orchard over on the Coast Range, but it was also a Homestead apple orchard. I'm not sure what variety apples these are, but I took a bite out of one earlier and it wasn't quite ripe. So I'll come back in a couple of weeks and check on this. But we have hunting season coming up. The animals key in on these just like we do. They love eating them just like we do. There's a lot of different things that you can make out of these. Applesauce, fruit leathers, you can dry them. Sky's the limit. Pies, you can make apple pies out of these. They're a real firm apple that make very well into pies. But a lot of these trees don't produce super heavy.
But you can occasionally get heavy fruitings when the trees are taken care of and when they don't have a lot of dead growth like this one does. So be on the lookout for old Homestead apple orchards. You can get some really good food out of them and something good to eat for the table. And also animals that might be competing for this food source as well that you can harvest, you know, with the proper licenses and tags. So there you go, Homestead apples, and you can always test them by taking a bite out of them. Still needs a little more time.
So it looks like we're back. So hopefully you guys, you know, saw those apples, and maybe you've run across those old homesteads that are up in the Sierra Nevadas. These are old gold rush homesteads, and a lot of them brought old variety of apples that we're not used to getting in the supermarkets. They're not made for shelf storage. They get ripe fast and they get rotten quick. So, but if you find them, the animals are going to find them, and if you're a hunter, those are great places you can hunt, and it's not baiting. So,
a lot of the early settlers, they not only brought with them apples, but some of the Spanish Mexican immigrants brought with them cactus. And just like you would find apples in an old homestead, in the strangest parts of California, you can find prickly pear cactus, or I call it cactus fruit, prickly pear. There's various names for them. But once you watch this video and you start identifying what these cactuses are, you will notice that they're all over the place. You may not have noticed them, but I promise you, after you watch this video, you'll be driving around town. Oh, there's some there. Oh, look, there's some over there. And if you find them in abandoned places, out along rivers, or even in the forest, they're a wonderful thing to harvest.
Yeah, I would agree.
One of the favorite things I like to do with cactus fruit is they make excellent margaritas.
How do you how do you fight with the spines? Is there anything that we can show them to?
Actually, you know what? I think it would be better that we just watch this video. So enjoy my cactus fruit video and look forward to talking about it when it's over. So enjoy. Hi everyone. I'm going to show you some simple ways to harvest cactus fruit or prickly pear. Basic things you're going to need: a torch, simple little propane cylinder. Everybody that goes camping probably knows what these are. You can buy this little torch attachment in any hardware store. It just screws right onto the top and you have a torch. A knife and a pair of tongs. That's all that you need. Oh, and of course, something to put it in. Don't use paper bags because the juice will get out and your bag will tear. Use a bucket or some type of plastic container. You notice I'm not wearing gloves. Big mistake that beginners make is they put on thick leather gloves and they try to grab these things thinking it's going to protect them from the thorns. Well, yeah, it does to a point, and then you end up getting thousands of the little tiny, they're like microscopic little hair thorns. They get everywhere. You can't avoid it. So use fire and burn them off. What you do, you're going to get in here real close. I'm about an inch away. You're basically going to burn them down to ash. The skin will turn black and it'll pop and blister, which is what you want. Another mistake to avoid: don't focus on the top and the sides too much. Don't forget to get the underside. A lot of people go nuts on the top and they kind of rush on the bottom, and then that's where they get stuck with the thorns. And then when you're done, just take your tongs and a knife. You're using the tongs not because of the thorns, but because it's hot. And sometimes there's thorns on the ones that you didn't burn. And just cut it right off of the fruit. Oh, that is gorgeous. That is beautiful. That color right there is money. Oh, look at it. Look at the juice dripping out of it. It's the juice and the color that makes this stuff special. So what I like to do with it at this point is I'll put these in the bucket and I'll clean them when I get home. Under running water, I'll take my knife and the skin slides right off easily because you've kind of burnt it with the torch. And you don't have to go crazy if you miss some. And then towards the top where it gets kind of woody, I just kind of cut that off. That's pretty much it. You're going to throw this into a blender with a bunch of others, you know, 3-4 cups. I use a Cuisinart. That's preferred over a blender, but if you can use a blender, it works. Basically turn it into a pulp, run it through a strainer, get the juice out, and save that juice for margaritas, syrups, jellies. They are fantastic, and I love to harvest them September, October. So right after you watch this video, you can go do it. They are delicious. Oh, great. You can put a popsicle stick in them, put them in the freezer or the refrigerator, just eat them as a cold snack. They're really, really good. We can talk a long time on anything. I just like to talk, but I'll save time and see you in the next video. It's great.
So hopefully you guys were as educated as I got when I watched that video. I've always picked those prickly pears the hard way and just fought through those little spines, but that method of burning them off is so easy and makes them so much better to handle in the grand scheme of things. But are there any cautions we might want to do? Fire, right?
The whole state's burning up right now. So running around and with dry grass, playing with torches can be dangerous. So be really careful. Look around, look what you're burning, and just be cautious that you need to be fire safe. That's probably one of the main things to worry about is the thorns and the fire hazard.
So in addition, like making them popsicles, what you mentioned margaritas. What do you have a quick, simple recipe for everybody that can follow along and make their own cactus fruit margaritas?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I brought a little gift for you, Alan.
This guy.
I make the cactus. It doesn't keep very well in the refrigerator. It'll only last maybe a week. So when you go out and you harvest your cactus fruit, put it into containers and freeze it. It'll last for a year. This is cactus fruit that I took out of the freezer. I'm giving it to you so you can make a margarita one of these days.
Thank you, Henry.
It's a real easy recipe. Arthur Evans taught me this. It's the best margarita you'll ever make. It's called a 3-2-1. 3 parts tequila, 2 parts fresh lime juice, 1 part agave nectar, and then the +1 is the cactus fruit. Put in another part of that till you get the right color and the taste, and you'll have a cactus jack. That's what they call it.
I like it.
So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the cactus fruit.
I might try that when I get off duty tonight.
Yeah. So foraging is definitely something that I encourage everybody to try. And even if you don't enjoy what you find, maybe you can meet other people and branch off of each other's experiences. You just never know who you're going to meet and what parts of California foraging will take you.
Yeah, so speaking of parts of California, I was up in the high Sierras last week looking for things to video in my day-to-day patrol, of course. And I ran across a pretty cool berry that some of you may have seen and been intimidated by them. And that's the California gooseberry, a native gooseberry to California, not like the Eastern variety that doesn't have any spines. These have spines. But instead of me telling you about it, I filmed a video of the California gooseberry. So why don't you watch that? All right, here we are about 6,000 feet on the west slope of the Sierra Nevadas. We're up in Placer County right now. And what I found here is a gooseberry bush. They're native to California. The one thing about these things is they are loaded with spines, as you probably already saw in the video. One way, and really all you need to harvest these things is a pair of gloves, preferably something that is puncture resistant, like a leather
pair of leather gloves. They pop off the plants pretty easily. And what you can do with this is once you have these gloves, I like to kind of soften up the spines a little bit just by rolling them in my hand. Doesn't get them out of the way, but you can just take your knife and cut these in half and squeeze the contents of the fruit into your mouth. Makes for a great little trail snack, probably loaded with some kind of vitamins. But another thing you can do is you can turn these into jam or jelly. You know, the internet is full of recipes for these things, so you can turn them into juice and then in turn turn them into jelly. My old boss did this last year and wasn't super impressed with the juice, but said it had a lot of flavor. I've had gooseberry jelly, and it's fantastic. Whether the flavors are concentrated in the jelly or not, I'm not sure, but it's a really good fruit. You need to harvest a lot to make a batch of jam or a batch of juice especially, but it's something that you can find every year right around the turn of deer season. While you're out scouting for deer or just taking a hike, these gooseberries are all over, and just make sure you have some gloves or else you're going to be juggling these things in your hand while you try and harvest them. So good luck.
Well, hopefully you guys, you know, maybe you've seen those gooseberries or not, but they're all over the Sierra Nevadas, and usually between 5,000 and 7,000 feet. They like disturbed slopes, so if you going through timberland, you'll see some of them on there. You'll see them growing naturally. They're a fun, unique berry to eat, and they make some really good stuff. So we've talked about things that we can really just like eat and turn into juice. You ever find anything that you can use like as a spice or anything like that, Henry?
There's quite a few things out there. One of the spices that's available right now is wild fennel, and it grows in cities. It grows close to cities, mountains. You can find it just about anywhere. So wild fennel you can eat it, the whole plant. You're going to learn more about it in this next video, but I would say right now is the perfect time to go out and harvest fennel seeds if you love cooking and using home-cured, home-gathered spices. So right now I'm going to share with you a short little video on how to identify, collect, and use wild fennel. Enjoy. Hi everyone. Today I'm going to tell you about a very versatile plant called fennel. It grows wild all over California, and it loves disturbed, hostile type environments, which we have a lot of. I'm out here standing in the middle of dredger tailings, and it seems to be doing well here. If you look in the background, you can see a fennel bush there. There's one there, a couple over there, down in this area, several there, and there's one right here in front of me. If you have a decent sense of smell, you'll never go wrong with identifying fennel. Now in the spring when it's in bloom, these blossoms will be yellow. Stay away from anything with a white blossom that looks like fennel because it could be poison hemlock. But I don't want to scare you. These don't have white blossoms. They have yellow blossoms. And what makes them unmistakable is they smell like black licorice. If you take these seed pods and you break those seeds up a little bit, it smells exactly like black licorice. You just need to winnow the seeds a little bit. I just shake them around and kind of blow on them, and you can just eat them. Tastes just like black licorice. That's what makes fennel unmistakable. It is a substitute for anise seed also. You'll see little bowls of this on the table after you eat like Indian food, because it aids in digestion. It reduces gas and bloating and has all other types of medicinal purposes. I use it for cooking. I put it in my sausages, my meat dishes. I toast it and throw it in salads. You can put it in marinades. The entire plant is edible. Even, it's kind of the wrong time of year for the soft foliage. It's mostly in the spring. But this right here, it tastes just like black licorice. It's not as strong as the seeds. Now the bulbs, you've heard of fennel bulb. I found that in California, the wild fennel doesn't have a really good bulb. So if you really want, you know, a roasted fennel bulb or something, buy it at the store. But as far as the leaves for salads and fronds, you can chop it up. The seeds are fantastic. You want to pick them when they're brown, which is perfect this time of year. I like to pick these brown seed heads like this, because that means the seeds are formed and fully developed. And then you're just going to pinch off just the seed heads and kind of just grind them. And what you'll find is all of the soft material will, it's kind of hard to do this with one hand, but you'll end up with a handful of seeds. And that's totally loaded with flavor. Two ways you can increase the flavor of seeds when you use them in your cooking. You can roast them whole, put them in a pan with just dry roast them, shake them around in a saute pan, and it'll really bring out their aromatic flavors. Or you could crush them just before you use them whole. Just crush them. You can crush them in your hand with a spoon. You can put 2 spoons together and crush them, a little mortar and pestle, but that releases all the flavor. What's nice about this plant is you can find it just about anywhere in California. It really loves our roadsides. So as you're driving down the highways, just look around on the sides of the road. They grow anywhere from like 3 to 7 feet tall. You'll see the yellow blossoms. They kind of green stems, and they love disturbed sites. So they're all over California, and the seeds are perfect for harvesting now. So get out there and pick some fennel. If you have any questions about recipes or how to use it, just hit me up on my socials, and I'll give you all of my recipes that I use for fennel.
All right, so hopefully you guys, you're probably thinking to yourself, I have seen that plant everywhere, and probably didn't give it 2 looks, but that's your fennel seed, and it's super easy to harvest and get some good seasoning, whether you're a sausage maker making that authentic Italian sausage, it's there. So I appreciate that, Henry. It helped me because I've never harvested my own fennel, and I'm going to now.
There's some right up there.
I'm going to hit
While
it
the
on the way
last
out.
video was playing, Alan and I were standing offset in the shade because it's kind of warm. And as we're standing there, we're just looking around. We have blackberries that still have fruit on them. I looked over here on the side of the hill and I pointed, there's wild fennel growing all along there. And we noticed there's this huge, long, wild grapevine that Tarzan and Jane could swing from. It's that big. And I'm like, look at all the wild grapes here. Wild grapes are in season right now.
Right now.
Have you been finding any grapes down where you live?
I might have a secret spot or 200. They're everywhere. They are a prolific plant. They grow very, very well along riparian corridors, and particularly in the Central Valley, you see them all over the place. And we're along the Feather River right now, and there's grapes growing behind us, but
and they're native.
They're native California plants.
California's only native grape.
And just last week I went out and I harvested some, and why don't you guys watch the video and you can see what I was seeing. Forgive my video quality. I'm not the best selfie taking video.
It'll be fine.
But
I can't wait.
why don't you guys watch it and see?
So I wanted to show you guys one of my favorite, most abundant things to forage that's common along every waterway, basically in the Central Valley. Anywhere where there's tree growth, these vines will grow up, Every one of you knows exactly what this is. It's one of the easiest things to identify, most abundant, and it's our native California wild grape. We have these everywhere, like I said before, but here we go. Everybody probably knows what these grape leaves are. They have a very unique shape to them. We can, they all grow on a vine, pretty easy to do, but a lot of good uses out of these. This vine is particularly loaded. Some years you don't get much in the way of grapes, but this vine is doing really well. And this is on public land right on the Sacramento River in Yolo County, and you can harvest a significant amount of grapes off of these vines. And this is just one spot that I frequent on years that they produce really well, and this is one of them. Again, you can see the vines and the bunches. They pop off super easy. One of my favorite things to do out of these is make grape jelly, wild grape jelly. And we have them where you could just pop them off the vine. You could just pop them off the bunch. They're seeded, but they're delicious, especially when they're ripe. Little seed, 2 seeds generally each. Another good thing, what I like to do, like I said, make jelly out of them. Use what's called a steam juicer. You load up, it's like a triple boiler. Load up the top, turn it on, and the steam forces the juice out of the grape. You can crush it to kind of make it go faster. Then you take that and turn it into grape jelly. Another thing I like from that jelly, you can also make fruit leathers, like fruit roll-ups. If your kids, don't like eating grapes or fruit like mine, you can easily make a big batch with our native California wild grape.
So I imagine most of you guys have, if you've driven along the Sacramento River or any waterway, you've seen a jungly looking scene. Those are probably grapes, and they're the wild grapes. And this time of year, September, depending on where you are in along the state, they get ripe further in the south first, and as you go further north, it goes later into the season. So right now, September, late September, they're getting ready, ripe in the Sacramento area and further north as well.
How long did you pick for the other day when you picked some grapes?
Oh, that spot's loaded. I didn't move my feet, and I picked about 5 pounds of grapes.
Wow.
Without moving my feet.
And you mind sharing what you ended up doing with that harvest?
As a matter of fact, I don't mind sharing it all. So I went home and I put all the grapes in the pot and started cooking them really slowly, got them to where they exuded their juice. Then I turned that juice into wild grape jelly. And I brought a jar for you, Henry.
Oh, thank you.
It's such a versatile food. They have seeds in them, so we're not used to grapes with seeds, but the flavor, that is that old saying, the juice is worth the squeeze. There is no question that these wild grapes are a phenomenal source of food that you guys can get pretty much anywhere.
I'm super excited. I've eaten wild grapes my whole life. I chew them up, get the juice, and I spit out the seeds. But I've never had wild grape jelly. So a first. Thank you.
Go. Let me know how you
I'm
like
really
it.
excited. Did you have any trouble with it setting up?
Yeah, I tried to follow a recipe. It didn't set up the first time. And so I just followed a recommendation to come back and put it back in a pot and bring it to a boil, add some more pectin, and it set up after that.
Great. I can't wait to try it.
All right. So, those are in your face. We know what those are, but there are some unique things that you guys have seen as your whole lives and maybe not thought twice about them as them being a source of food. Henry, is there anything else that you found recently that would be a unique thing?
That this reminds me of a story. Last week, I was up in the mountains setting up some trail monitoring cameras for elk with one of my colleagues. And as I'm driving down out of the high country, I'm kind of going through that chaparral, blue oak transition area, dropping down into the valley floor. And the sun was setting, and I just noticed this beautiful view of all of these gray pines. And I still needed another segment, and there it was right there. I pulled over off on the side of the road, and I texted Alan and I said, I just found my last segment. And so we're gonna do pine cones, pine nuts. Enjoy this next video.
Look at those beauties up there. Yep, you guessed it, pine cones. And today, I'm going to share with you how to harvest pine nuts. I love pine nuts. Yeah, I'm being a little dramatic. I do that sometimes. So these are foothill pine, also called gray pine. They grow in the lowest elevations possible. So you'll see them as a conifer. They'll start popping up at 200-300 feet of elevation, and they'll go all the way up to about 2,000 the most. This old roadbed is loaded with cones that are just naturally falling on the roadbed, so it makes for easy harvesting. Pine cones everywhere. And you'll need to learn how to, with the trained eye, you'll learn which cones are fresh from this year. Like these are all old. They have a lot of, the pitch is all dry and crystallized. They're kind of oxidized on the exterior surface. They're all white. A lot of them are even rotting. But what you'll want to look for are these beautiful brown cones, the fresh ones. And you'll tell because the gray squirrels love them too. And somehow they know which ones have the nuts in them. Look at this. They're just gorging on these pine nuts, and these are perfect cones. Tools to harvest pine nuts: you're going to need a good pair of leather gloves, which I don't have. These are covered with sap, and those cones have some sharp points on them. So without leather gloves, yeah, it's a little rough, but with them you can be rough. And then a good pair of boots, because you're going to stomp on them. This is how you do it, in the field. That way you just take the nuts home with you, and you don't have to take a ton of space with these sticky pine cones. And as you can see, I've done this scene a few times, and my camera keeps falling off the tree. So hopefully we can get it this time. I should use some of the sap in those cones to make it stick to the branch. After you harvest pine nuts for a while, you'll know why they're so expensive in the store. So what I like to do is you'll take your pine cone and you'll just gently throw it down and just rotate it. I'm spinning it each time. And you're knocking the nuts out. Feel like Yule Gibbons. After you knock the nuts out with the gentle method, now you're going to use those boots of yours. Give it a good stomp. Rotate it. Give it a good stomp. Oh, there's pine nuts flying out of this one. Give it a good stomp. And now you can sort through and start picking up all the pine nuts that have fallen out. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. So you could tell if you did spend a few minutes working on this, you could get a pretty good bag of just the nuts. They have a really thick shell. I've got a whole handful of them here. These flies are in my face. When you crack them, little trick, hold the skinny end and whack the fat end. That way you can pull it out if you just hold it and hit it any random way, the skinny end falls off and you can't pull the fat end out of the skinny hole. So you end up breaking it in a bunch of pieces. And it helps to have like a little toothpick or something with you. So you just give it a little tap on the fat end. You'll hear it crack. Oh, beautiful. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous white meated nut. You can see that. I could eat a cup of these things, no problem. Key ingredient in pesto, you can throw them in salads. If you want to bring out the flavor, throw them in a dry pan over the stove and just shake them around over a medium heat for a few minutes. It kind of toasts them, brings out the flavor. Pine nuts are a great thing to harvest this time of year. They're available starting now all through the middle of winter, but the later you go, the more the squirrels are going to get them. So go harvest some pine nuts today.
So if I remember right, Henry, these the gray pines, they're the ones with those big, heavy, like will knock you out if they land on your head pine cones.
And sharp.
And they've got those little sharp points on the leaves, or what would you call that?
You know what I learned the other day? Mark Stouffer is my botanical advisor. He said those sharp points you're talking about, they're called armored umbos. When you grab a cone and if it pokes you, that cone is armored. And if you pick up the cone and it does not have armored umbos. So if you want to know if you are picking up the right kind of cone, that's one indication. If you need gloves and it has sharp points, you have yourself a gray pine. And those are the ones that have really large meats or pine nuts. Most pines don't have very, very large nuts, but anyway, the gray pines do.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. You know, and that's another thing I've only bought in the store. So I'm gonna go. I've got a lot of them around where I live, so I'm gonna go give that a try and make some pesto. I got half Italian in me, and there is a little bit of pesto love in there, so I'm gonna give that a whirl. But one thing I just wanted to tell you guys too, you know, we all get into foraging for different reasons. I was a hunter and then a forager, but it goes the other way too. You know, people today, they want to get their own food or non-GMO, you know, that kind of stuff. And all this stuff that's growing out here, yeah, it may not pass the test to be organic, but it's still, as long as you wash it, safe to eat. One tip I have is don't pick blackberries below your knees, especially if you're at a roadside stop. If you can imagine what happens there on the sides of roads, you won't pick them. But, you know, if you go higher up in the plants, you could do it. But anyway, back to what I was talking about between the foraging and the hunting side of things and the fishing side of things too, because you find a lot of these things along waterways is, you know, if you have any interest in the hunting, you know, our department operates our hunter education program, and you can find a class there. And even if you're not going to hunt, getting that education and finding out what hunting's about is beneficial to everybody. When you understand what the Department of Fish and Wildlife does, where the funding comes from, how the funding is spent, it's beneficial to your daily life. And some of that funding goes to probably paying Henry's salary with the state and running the hunter education program and a whole bunch of other projects. So hunter education, California hunter education, if you Google that, it'll come right up. So, but I think we got time for some Q&A. So we want to get into that and answer any questions that you guys might have in the time that we have. Take it away, Bridget.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alan and Henry. Those videos were phenomenal. We've got some great stuff going in the chat just about people are super appreciative of everything. They love your guys' chemistry together. They're just having a great time, all the attendees right now. So thanks you guys so much. Some great questions also have come up through the chat. One of them was for Henry, what's the best time of year to harvest the prickly pears?
Best time of year is right now. And when we get a cold snap, which we could have at any time, they get better. So I filmed that video with the prickly pear about a week ago, and they were just starting to get ripe. So you haven't missed it yet, all the way through December. When you see the animals eating them and the birds eating them, that's a good time. But right now, all the way through December is the best time.
Awesome.
Like a lot of plants that once they get cold, a lot of the sugars go into the fruit.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So knowing that now that this around now is the best time, how do we make those margaritas? They want the margarita recipe.
Oh, I think I gave that. It's 3-2-1. The Arthur Evans 3-2-1. 3 parts tequila, 2 parts fresh lime juice, 1 part agave nectar, and then you can add your cactus fruit at the end, about another part, maybe 2 parts. Shake it violently over ice for 2 minutes. Very, very important step. You need that ice to dilute to get the drink to the proper concentration. And that is the famous 3-2-1 Cactus Jack Margarita recipe.
Love it. That sounds like a very magical happy hour for quarantine. Nicely done. So someone asked, would the cactus fruit be considered a berry?
I do not know. I do not know.
No worries.
I'm going to go with fruit because they don't call them cactus berries. So I'll have to consult Mark Stouffer, my botanical advisor, but I'm going to go with cactus fruit, my final answer.
Thank you. Now, is there a general rule about how much you should forage off an individual plant? Like what percentage off of an individual plant should you take?
Boy, I'll take a stab at that.
Yeah, I've got an idea too on.
I would say ethically, you need to understand a little bit about the plant or the organism that you're foraging off of. And the idea is sustainability. Am I taking so much that I'm jeopardizing this plant's health or survivability? In most cases, the answer is not even close. So if you were to go and pick every single blackberry off of a bush, all you would be doing is keeping them from another picker or maybe the birds or the bears or the foxes, but you're not going to harm the plant. Same with mushrooms. Everybody thinks, oh, you're going to take all the mushrooms, but with mushrooms, the organism is underground in the mycelium. And when you pick a mushroom, you're picking the fruit, not the organism. The organism's underground, and it's like picking a blackberry. So it's very, very difficult to really destroy a plant by picking too much.
Yeah, and I would add, if you're going to go out and forage just what you need. Don't take what you don't need.
That's excellent.
You know, if you get home and you realize you have too much, give it away. Let somebody else use it. But if you're not going to use it, you're going to end up just throwing it in the trash, and it just goes to waste. So it's kind of that shared, you know, you're going to take what you need, leave some for others, leave some for the critters. But that way you're not wasting any of it.
Very good point. Definitely. Are there any books that you guys would recommend, like for beginners on like foraging and edible plants in California? Are there any good books out there for that?
Yeah, I think I have 2 in my truck right now. I don't know if I should grab one and show you which book, but one of them is called Backyard Foraging, and the other one is California Edible Plants. And really basic. I believe all the species we talked about today are in those books and a bunch of other ones. They make it really easy and make you feel comfortable that you're identifying the right plant.
And for those of you that have an interest in learning how to identify edible mushrooms and you want to kind of take that big step, don't be intimidated. It's not as scary as you might think. And buy this book. It's a little small field guide. It's called All That the Rain Promises and More by David Aurora. And that's a great book. You can stick it in your back pocket, because what I found is if the books are too big, they're never where you need them. You have to have them with you when you're walking down the trail. And if you see something, it's like, oh, let's key it out. And,
so don't be bringing the dictionary versions out with you. Not a good idea.
Try to find the little small field guide that you'll actually take with you out in the woods. Mushroom hunting is something that I do an awful lot of. And you could even mushroom hunt right now. You just have to go up around 7,000 feet get into that lodgepole pine, tamarack meadow complex. And if there's been thunder shower activity there, the key to summertime porcini is following the thunderstorms. So you might be half a mile away and it could be bone dry, but when those thunderstorms dump, they can get a flush of porcini. And September is an outstanding time for high elevation porcini. You just have to know where those thunderstorms were. There's lots of spots. There's going to be a rush on Yosemite.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Someone asked about the pine cones. Are all like the pine cone nuts edible? Like all of them? Like I guess from different varieties of pine?
I am not aware of any toxic pine trees. Most of them have such small nuts. They have very little food value. So the pinyon pine has a large nut, and the foothill pine. The commercial pine nuts that you can buy in the store, those might be pinyon. Those are probably pinyon, but it has to have a large enough nut size to make it worth the effort, to harvest. And the two that I mentioned do have large, meaty nuts.
Awesome. And then someone asked about acorns, just kind of, I guess, some general information about acorns, and then how long do they typically last after harvest before you need to turn them into flour?
Yeah, the acorns, I was going to do a segment on acorns and just didn't find a good enough tree to excuse me, to film.
What variety of acorn do you prefer?
Valley oak, the long cone, longer cone ones. Black oaks are also good. The acorns have different levels of tannins in them, so that's one of the biggest differences. You need some of them can leach out. You have to leach those tannins out, whether you do a hot or cold leaching. So depending on what those tannin levels are, it'll dictate how long you leach them. One of the easiest ways to leach them is once you crack them from the shell, which is much easier when they're dry and the husk is brown. Put them in a bag, put them in a mesh bag. This may sound funny, but you put them in your toilet tank. Take out the white biscuit and get all the bleach out of it. And every time you flush the toilet, it's going to change the water and it's going to flush those tannins down the toilet, but refill fresh, clean water. And you don't have to do anything with it. Because some of these acorns especially when you cold leach them, it takes a while to get those tannins out. So this is a way you could do it where you're constantly refreshing the water. Sounds funny, but it works. As far as shelf life of it, I don't have a good answer for that because usually I've made batches that are small enough they get utilized long before they're going to go bad. So there's probably literature on shelf life of acorn nut meats or flour. So maybe we could try and find something and put that on the R3 site for you guys who might be interested in that.
How do you know when the tannins are gone? You do a taste
you
test?
do a little taste test. If it gives like an astringent kind of bitter taste when you put it on your tongue, then there's still tannins in it. Once you do it and there's no bitterness to it, they're probably done.
So a couple weeks, a few days, a month?
Depends on the acorn. Okay. If they're, and I couldn't tell you which acorns are best or have the lowest amount of tannins, but there's some really good books out there, and that California Edible Plants has some of the tannin values in it.
Awesome. So yeah, it depends on the acorn, like you said, Alan, and then apparently it depends on your toilet too, potentially.
Yeah, it depends on how many people you have living in your house, and how many bathrooms you have.
How many kids you have.
That is great. Okay, I think we have time maybe for one or two more questions. So what about wild greens? Like when and where? Wild greens.
Wild greens. Well, most people with wild greens, miner's lettuce. That's sort of like the gateway wild green for basic foraging. And that's going to be in the spring, February, March, April. Yeah. Miner's lettuce is a good place to start. You'll see that in the valley floor going all the way up to about 5,000 feet. And I would say your greens are going to be in the spring. I love to harvest stinging nettle. It's fantastic. Nettles in the spring. A lot of the soft growth parts of the plant that's coming out of its winter dormancy is pushing out all that new tender growth. So a lot of the foliage is edible in the spring.
Watercress.
Watercress is a great one. Yeah, and that's an indication of high water quality too. Good water
in the
quality.
Ditches and
Yes.
sloughs, you'll find the watercress, and you can get a lot of it, and it's a good eating plant.
Awesome.
Yeah, target those in the spring.
Awesome. Thank you. And then do you have like a list of like, I guess, safety considerations for knowing if an area has been sprayed, like where you maybe shouldn't forage potentially? Is there any like indicators or?
Yeah, well, I look for if you see a big strip of yellow where where they went down the roadside and sprayed herbicide, yeah, that's an obvious one. A lot of times the stuff right on the roadside, it'll be dead if they've sprayed it. But some of those chemicals take a few days to take effect. So if they sprayed it, let's say in the morning, and you happen to go out there that afternoon or the next day, it's not going to look like they sprayed it. So yeah, that, like Ellen was saying, just wash it. Most of the stuff you're going to find in the wild is very, very healthy. A little dirt's not going to hurt you. The stuff that you forage out in the wild's much healthier than many of the things that you're already buying at the store.
Yeah,
Definitely.
another on that is the shelf life of these things you harvest in the wild is not what we get out of the food we buy at the grocery store. So be ready if you're going to harvest a lot of berries or grapes. You're going to have a plan to utilize those because they're going to go bad quick. They're not harvested and selected for long shelf life. So make sure you're ready to take care of those if you're going to make jams, jellies, juices, or whatever.
Do you own a dehydrator?
I own a dehydrator, a steam juicer, there's a lot of things you can do with this stuff.
That's awesome. Real quick too, and this is for both of you probably. What can you kind of speak to maybe the relationship between like hunting, fishing, and foraging, like how these all kind of maybe move together, hunting, fishing, and foraging?
Yeah, so in like I said earlier, my foray into foraging came from the hunting side. So I started paying more attention to what food was available for the animals, and then realizing that I can eat this stuff too, and that just led into more education for myself. All right, what else could I find? What else could I find? And it's just for me, going out, like say mushroom hunting is another form of hunting for me. It takes a little bit of knowledge to know their habitats, to know when to go there, when they're ripe, and which ones are ripe. So it's another reason for me to get out in the outdoors, to take my kids and my wife and go out and go for a hike. If you're a forager going into the hunting side, it's just another way to obtain food that is it's humanely raised. It's running around on the landscape, and you can harvest that deer or that pig or turkey, quail, duck, dove, all these other species in a sustainable fashion, and have yourself some really, really good meals that you can take pride in and feel good about, that what you did was legal and healthy for your family. So it all goes hand in hand. The hunters, I guarantee most hunters, if they see a berry patch, they're going to be picking them. Not necessarily a forager out berry hunting sees a deer, might not necessarily take that deer, but the idea is there. And it's all about sustainability on the landscape, both with plants and animals.
The founder of modern wildlife management is Aldo Leopold, and he would spend time in the woods, as would John Muir, and they would spend time in nature. And when you quiet yourself, you hone your skills of observation. And whether you're foraging is a form of hunting, by the way. You just happen to be hunting plants or some other type of edible. So foraging in itself is hunting, but it places you in nature. Whether you're targeting a fish, whether you're trying to harvest an animal, whether you're foraging plants, you're there to be in nature, and your powers of observation will grow over time. Put yourself out there, watch what the animals are doing, look at how the plants are growing, and see how everything is connected. And your knowledge and understanding of ecosystems and how the world is connected and how we're related to our food and the health of our planet, all of these things start becoming more and more visible. Read some of the transcendentalists, you know, Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Aldo Leopold, John Muir. These are all of some incredible people that will shape how you forage, how you view the land, how seriously you take gathering your own food. And I promise you this, there's nothing more satisfying than sharing a meal that you provided from the land with those that you love. And for me, that's the essence of foraging.
I'm not going to try and top that.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for being here today and those wonderful videos. I'm gonna go make a margarita, some jam, and clean out my toilet. That is awesome. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here today.
Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. To our attendees, you guys, just so you know, we will be sending you out some resources and information. Please always refer back to the R3 page if you have any questions, or you can also email us through the R3 wildlife email. If you have questions that didn't get answered here today, we want to make sure we get back to you. So thanks everybody so much for being here today. Appreciate you. Have a good one. See you out there foraging.